Hello there, my very good friends. Andy here for WhatCulture Wrestling to report that Hulk Hogan has passed away at 71 years old. The news just broke within the past half hour or so. It was TMZ who had this first, noting that earlier today medics were sent out to Hogan's home in Clearwater, Florida. This morning he had apparently, according to the operators, suffered a cardiac arrest. Now, apparently there were a slew of police cars and EMTs outside of Hogan's house. I'm just reading this to you from the article here because it's all very new. He was carried onto a stretcher into an ambulance. According to the police, who responded to the call at 9:51 a.m., Hogan was treated by fire and rescue personnel before he was taken to hospital. When he got to the hospital, he was pronounced dead. There will be apparently additional details to be announced by the police later on today. And it comes following a pretty turbulent period regarding Hogan's health and rumours towards his health. Bubba the Love Sponge, who was a years-long associate of Hogan, had speculated a lot and put a lot of information out there. He, a couple of days ago, claimed that Hogan was in something adjacent to hospice care, basically. While trying to avoid that specific word. And about a month or so ago, there were rumours that Hogan was on what was described as his deathbed. That was covered by TMZ at the time as well. TMZ later clarified that actually he was just dealing with symptoms suffered following a neck procedure that he'd undergone in May. So that, kind of dissipated. Today we have learned that Hulk Hogan has passed away. What on earth can I possibly say about Hulk Hogan and his wrestling legacy within the space of a single one-person video? It's impossible to fully capture the significance of Terry Bollea to pro wrestling as an art form, to its rise from what it was in the 80s, to WWE going national, to the surge of WrestleMania, to jumping ship to WCW, the Monday Night Wars, his very important role in the company there, for the competition, his groundbreaking, really, and I'm speaking objectively here, his industry-changing work as both a face and a heel will never be replicated in this sport. There's a very short list of people who are responsible for creating wrestling as we know it today, and he's certainly one of them. So, yeah, there's a lot to go over here, man. Look, it's Hulk Hogan. It's a very complicated case because his career, in the 80s, obviously, he went supernova in WWE. He forged that babyface character after coming over, after transferring from the AWA. He's wrestled all over the world by this point, of course. But he crafts that superhero character, that larger-than-life red and yellow, all real American persona that the company was built around for so many years. He offered a more bombastic and loud and kind of rock and roll style presentation to pro wrestling that was in line with what Vince McMahon wanted to do. It was perfectly aligned with his idea that this could be more than wrestling and it should be an all-round entertainment product. And he was the perfect hero for that era, just as Bruno Sammartino was in decades prior. As you know, the working class hero. Hulk Hogan was the superhero for that new era. A tremendous foil for a great many heels in WWE, opposite the likes of the Iron Sheik and Roddy Piper and later Randy Savage after the Mega Powers exploded and all of that stuff. He was exactly what the company needed at the time. He was the guy that you put on the TV show that you sold cereals with, that went over here and did a few movies. And yeah, maybe not the best movies in the world, but that was beside the point. Hulk Hogan was a cross-cultural star. Vince McMahon was looking to build a cross-cultural product, and Hogan was a tremendous objective success as a long-standing WWE champion, as a mega draw, spanning multiple eras. Red and Yellow was a phenomenon, and you kind of go through the years and you cross into the 90s, and you know, there's the rivalry with the Ultimate Warrior, who was rising up as like an incredible babyface at the time as well, and the Ultimate Challenge and all of that stuff. And yeah, you get to like 1992, and the wheels are starting to come off a little bit, right? Maybe Hulkamania isn't quite as potent as it once was, and you know, we all know about the shenanigans with Yokozuna at WrestleMania, and the title reign, and Hogan drifting out of the company. Maybe this isn't a thing anymore. He signs with the competition, WCW, and then goes on to have a transformative impact with that company as well, ultimately doing something completely different, turning heel, being the third man in the NWO, joining Hall and Nash for a legendary heel run, ditching red and white for black and white, and you know, doing the weird facial hair and all of that stuff. Legendary stuff, man. Like, you know, like a lot of things in WCW, towards the end, the NWO kind of descended into retreads and stuff like that. But initially, he was the perfect villain for that, alongside the Outsiders. They were the coolest guys in all of wrestling. And it's a remarkable reinvention, really, when you consider that in WWF, in the then WWF, Hogan was Superman, and he goes over and he becomes like this extremely cool villain alongside Hall and Nash. They were true outsiders in all of this. They came from the competition. They had that long run. Hogan is very instrumental in a number of big things, and I know that doesn't work for me, brother. It's become a meme over the years, and understandably so. But things like putting over Goldberg, right, as WCW champion in Atlanta in the late 90s with that bumper crowd. It's kind of a perfect moment, and it's not just because Goldberg was on this surge and he was in his hometown and he was undefeated and all of that stuff. Hogan actually did a really tremendous job putting him over as well, stooging around, making himself look like an ass as the heel. And you know, really helping put Goldberg over the top as the babyface in WCW, much as many other people had done for him in the WWF over the years. Now, of course, WCW ended the way it did. The company went out of business. He didn't end up immediately coming over to WWE as part of the invasion, like a lot of top stars in the company did at the time. It was many years later for some of them. Hogan did eventually make his way back over to WWE, of course, and he was there for a great few years. For me, the highlight of that second big run in WWE is unquestionably The Rock at WrestleMania 18. Cody Rhodes called that his favourite wrestling match of all time, and I understand why. I think it's my favourite WrestleMania match. It's a remarkable bit of business. And I've always said that the Hulk up spot in that match, when he fights through The Rock's offense, this old, gnarled version of Hulk Hogan, and the crowd's right behind him, and he points, and he hulks up, and he hits the big boot, and he drops the big leg. It's one of my favourite moments in wrestling history. I'm literally getting the many hairs on my arm are currently standing up on end talking about that. And, you know, he was with WWE for a bit longer. He was world champion again. He had the ridiculous Shawn Michaels match at SummerSlam. They're coming up on the 20-year anniversary of that. All kinds of other stuff. Mr. America. You know, he left the company again. He ended up in TNA, and, you know, the latter periods of Hogan's career certainly weren't as productive. And look, a man of many controversies, and we will talk about those in time, of course, but I don't think this right now is really the place for that. Something I think that gets under-discussed about Hulk Hogan in, you know, actually really of the past 20 years or so, is what he did as a worker, right? And what he did in the ring and all of this stuff. And yeah, like, if you want to compare Hogan to like the modern work rate kind of style, yeah, you're going to go, the guy's a bit limited. He does like 3 moves or whatever. Who cares? I would argue that the wrestling is never about how many moves you can do. It's about how you deploy them and how you build to them and how you execute them. Ultimately, wrestling is about forging a connection with the crowd. It's about working the people in the building and the people at home. Primarily the people in the building, because that creates a hot atmosphere, and, you know, it started untelevised and all of this stuff. And Hogan was great at that. Tremendous at that. You know, you can, like the Goldberg, the Rock match is that's my personal favorite of his, right? And that's from 2002. But you can go back to like 1981. And I think it's 1981. If it's not that, it's like 2 or 3, early 80s. He has a match in the WWF where it's him versus Andre the Giant, right? Before WrestleMania 3. And Hogan's the heel and Andre's the babyface. And it's such an interesting flip on the dynamic. Hogan's an ass in that match. And Andre, who's 7 foot plus, is really sympathetic, selling for this guy who's stooging off throughout. Like, there's a lot of great Hulk Hogan works out there, man. There really is. Savage, Warrior. There's a bunch you can pluck. Yeah, look, maybe not the fastest or most explosive guy in the world or whatever, but it didn't matter, right? Because he was the perfect guy for his era. You cannot argue with the overness and the popularity and the frenzy. Genuine cultural phenomenon in pro wrestling. The very few others throughout history have ever come close to replicating. I mean, you want to talk about WWF, obviously Bruno Sammartino, right? Steve Austin, 100%, massive, responsible for the ushering in of the Attitude Era and all that. Much as Hogan was successful, the reason for, a big reason for the Golden Era and WWE surging in popularity during that phase and Vince McMahon's kind of aggressive expansion. The Rock, yeah, absolutely. Similar period to Austin, obviously. Those two guys had very short primes on top. John Cena, you know, the similar conversation, and actually that's the similar touchstone that people go to nowadays when it's like, when they perceive someone's being overpushed, it's Cena, Hogan, all this stuff. Those are the comparison points. But that's what worked in the era for Hulk Hogan. Beating everybody, looking like a badass, winning all of his matches, commanding the crowds, holding them in the palm of his hand. That's what worked for that era. And when it didn't work, and when it stopped working, it took a few years, obviously, to figure it out. But he went over to WCW and became a game-changing heel. The NWO transformed the fortunes of that promotion. The reveal of the Third Man is one of the most memorable angles of all time. And the company really had WWE on the back pedal for a long time. And a lot of that was to do with Hulk Hogan and the NWO and Hall and Nash and you know, the various adversaries, the baby faces that they faced off with during this period. So look, it's a man whose impact on the pro wrestling business cannot go understated. He is like a top 1 in terms of impact and all of that stuff. And in his heyday, he was a really good worker too. You know, we're not talking about like Bret Hart levels of wizardry. He's a completely different style of wrestler. But that should not go unsaid. So when it comes to situations like this, I always think first of all of the people close to him, who've lost a friend, who've lost a family member. My thoughts go out to them first and foremost. I'm sure there'll be more details on this coming through from TMZ that we'll talk about tomorrow or whatever. But rest in peace is you know, it's really impossible to just cover the full breadth of Hulk Hogan in professional wrestling. It's these all-encompassing figures who transcend the sport and become genuine cultural touchstones. You know, anytime I go around and I tell like a new person I've just met what I do, and they're not wrestling fans, but they go, Hulk Hogan. Or The Rock, or if they're a bit younger. But yeah, I remember Hulk Hogan and all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, man, like, that's an anecdotal thing, but I imagine it's probably the exact same for you guys at home, if you're at least if you're in my kind of age group. There's only one Hulk Hogan at the end of the day, and he is absolutely a tentpole of pro wrestling. He is... I don't know how to fully encapsulate his impact. It's impossible in a single video, but we will be back. We'll talk about this more. TMZ reporting the news, recap at the start of the video, talking about the situations. There will be more details. I'll see you soon. And once again, thoughts and prayers to everybody close to Hulk Hogan, who has today passed away at 71 years old. See you later. Bye.